right, looks like it worked. Woohoo.
Oh yeah, okay, you've seen it before me. It's redirecting. So if anybody is on, let me know that you can hear so you can see us. This little tech check. It does say live. I'm just not seeing it yet. All right, everybody. So welcome. I want to welcome a special guest, Dr. Shawn Talbott. I was asked to give the short version of. So he is the founding executive and chief science officer of Amari Global. You have multiple degrees, and you yourself are an athlete. You work with professional athletes. So tell us a little bit of why you chose to focus on the gut-brain axis and gut health in general.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, to tell you the honest truth, I came to the gut-brain axis just by way of where the science was going, right? I've been studying something. So my PhD is in nutritional biochemistry. So since the beginning of my career, I've always been looking at, how does nutrition or supplements or certain nutrient or something like that change biochemistry? How does it change stress hormones, or how does it change inflammatory levels and that kind of stuff, right? But kind of, in the early part of my career, that was always like nutrition, biochemistry. The sort of reason for it was physical performance, right? How can we get athletes to perform at the highest level? And then that sort of physical performance morphed into mental performance. And then mental performance, studying that, I was looking at stress levels and mental focus and grit and mental toughness and things like that. How could athletes use their mind to get more out of their bodies? And just because of where the science was going, all the newest research around what's happening up here in your brain is really coming from what's happening down here in your gut. And so it wasn't like I started studying the gut. I was always studying human performance mentally and physically. And nowadays, all that new cutting edge science is coming from the microbiome and the gut-brain axis. And that's the way that we can really sort of, in a really different way, get people to perform at their peak.
So would you say that is the missing link for a lot of athletes to get to that next level? Is that?
Oh, completely. Absolutely. I mean, no like overstatement of that that the people who want to get the most out of their physical and mental performance are always looking for that competitive edge, and the newest cutting edge is gut-brain axis, and it's kind of because, like, I tell athletes this all the time. Everybody knows how to build muscle. Everybody knows how to hydrate. Everybody knows how to improve endurance in terms of like what carbohydrates you use and all that kind of stuff. Like that's all sort of known stuff. All your competition are doing the same things that you are. But the people who are getting the edge are the ones who are able to get the most out of their mental performance in order to fuel their physical performance. So if it's a microbiome thing, we can get the bacteria in your gut to make more dopamine so that you're more energetic and motivated, or we can make more GABA so that you're relaxed and you don't choke when you're in that high stress situation. Like those are things that we know scientifically are possible, but almost nobody is doing it because it's such a new area of science.
Mm-hmm. So when you have an athlete come to you that says, hey, Dr. Shawn, I want to take my performance to the next level. I hear what you're talking about with mental focus and mental wellness. Where do I even start? Like there's so much right now with gut health. Like what do I do?
It's funny because the answer that's a good question, but the answer to it kind of depends on how specific that athlete wants to get, or if they're don't even think they're an athlete, right? If they're like recreational athletes, like you and I are, we're doing it to stay fit, we're doing it to feel our best, and like all that kind of stuff. The how far you want to go with it is kind of the question. So you could take it very, very generally and say, what you need to do, you need to take care of your gut, right? So eat more fiber, make sure you're getting your fermented foods, like your yogurts and things like that. And you'll have better gut health, and you'll be better than you were before. Then you could get a little more specific and you could say, well, okay, I can do that. But, is there like a diet plan I can go on? And you could say, sure, eat more like the Mediterranean diet, lots of brightly colored fruits and vegetables and healthy fats and that kind of stuff. Or you could go the next level and get really, really targeted. And then we can say, you know what? It's not just any fiber. It's these specific kinds of fibers that we call prebiotics that will feed the kind of bacteria that'll make the kinds of bioactive compounds that'll give you that mental edge. Or we could actually give you the right bacteria. We could give you a specific strain of probiotic bacteria that's going to lower your stress and lower your cortisol and help you recover better from your hard workouts, right? So, the sort of what do I do comes down to like, well, how targeted do you want to get with your regimen? So.
And I love what you touched on as far as it's the everyday athlete, and you may not even think you're an athlete, but you want to perform better working out or just with your kids home all the time, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that is. So you're finding there's specific strains of bacteria that you can put into your gut that actually help reduce stress.
Yeah, and that I think is the coolest part of where this whole gut-brain axis idea has gone in just the last couple of years, right? It's really, really new stuff where, for a long time, we're telling people eat more fiber, eat more phytonutrients, all that kind of stuff. But now we can get down to that level of saying, look, if you want to control your stress, we have one specific strain of bacteria that we know does that. If you want to control your anxiety, we have another one that does that. If you want to control your depression, we have one that does that. If you want general resilience, we have one that does that. So I'm actually in a clinical trial right now that I'm not running, which is so fun for me to do, where I'm a subject and I'm taking an experimental probiotic that is supposed to help me with my endurance, right? So there's that one that now I can take that from a research group that I know at Harvard. They sent me a little 2-week supply, and I'm able to take that every day. And I just finished my first week today, and I've got one more week, and it's supposed to help me metabolize carbohydrates so I don't build up lactic acid, so I'm able to run faster, right? So it doesn't get any more specific than that. And that's a bacteria that's having an effect in my gut to gobble up the lactic acid that I'm producing while I'm working out, so it doesn't build up. It's really, really cool science that we can do now.
I'm such a gut geek. I've been geeking out about this before it was even talked about because I had so many gut issues myself. So would you say, even if somebody's not ready to change their food, if they're not working out super hard, they're just moving enough to kind of maintain, would you say looking at the gut and the microbiome in the gut is a way for them to start transforming their body and mind, body, physical, mental, all of that?
Yeah. That's a great way to say it. And I think the way you just described it is the perfect way to describe it to people, because, for so many people, right? We're stressed out, we're busy, we've got our workouts to do, we've got our work to do, we've got our families to take care of. Like, it's just too much to say to somebody like, okay, now we're going to have you eat like a professional athlete, and, your diet has to be all dialed in. What I love about where the supplement piece is now is that the science has developed so much that we can say to somebody, here's a prebiotic supplement, here's a probiotic supplement. It's already been researched. All you have to do is take it. And the advantage of that is that it's, in a sense, it's almost like, hitting the easy button for people, because if you can take that thing that works in your gut, that helps your brain feel less stressed or more energetic or more motivated or more resilient or whatever the case may be, then that's great because you got that benefit. But now you're in this place where you've almost got more bandwidth, where, now if your stress is lower, now your appetite is going to change and you're not going to have that stress eating, right? So you're going to automatically, almost subconsciously, choose a better diet. If you take something that improves your motivation, now you're more likely to go do your workout, so like those kinds of things where you can take these supplements that start you on that path of making a better diet and making better physical activity choices and being relaxed so you get good sleep quality. It's like that first piece of the puzzle that starts you on this good road that you had every intention to go down, but you just didn't have that start. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I talk to people all the time because I'm sure you're talking to athletes. Do you ever hear, I hear this all the time, I don't believe in supplements. I don't believe.
I do hear that all the time. And, I shake my head because, I kind of get where it comes from, right? There's a lot of supplements out there that make these outlandish claims, right? About, burning fat or, boosting your performance or, whatever, like too good to be true. And so I get it that somebody might come to this with like being very skeptical. But I also want people to be what I call an open-minded skeptic, to say, okay, if you can show me that there's some research that backs up why it makes sense for me to take this thing, then okay. And if they're truly open-minded about it, and the company can say, here's the research, and the research is good enough for you to go, all right, I'll give it a try. Then once you feel that result, then you get the benefit. And so, the other thing that I'll say to athletes is that, if you were going to try to get in shape and somebody said, well, all you need to do is run, right? Just go out and run. That's going to be that'll get you in shape. And they didn't say, well, you could also, lift weights. You could also do CrossFit. You could also do there's never one avenue to doing anything. And I really view supplements as like that other tool. It's just one more tool in the toolbox. Why would you not make use of all the tools that you have access to? Diet is a piece of the tool. Working out is a piece of the toolbox, your mindset, your sleep, your recovery, and your supplements, so you figure out where those fit in your overall regimen.
And you find a regimen and you stick to it, because some people think I take supplements for a short period of time and then I'm good, but our food supply isn't what it used to be. So especially when we're talking about like these mental wellness parameters like stress and recovery and sleep quality and mental focus and things like that. Those are all things that they can go haywire because of the input of stress that we're chronically having. And because of that, you always need to have sort of a, like what I call a buffering capacity against that stress. And so, I'll say to people, great, if you're in a period of low stress, you might not need as many supplements. But if you're in a period of high stress, you ought to balance that high stress with an appropriate supplement intake. So for athletes that are in a really intense training phase, they might be taking more. In a lower intense training phase, they might be taking less. For people like you said before, who don't consider themselves to be an athlete, if they have a lot of stress input, they'd be taking a lot. If they have a low stress input, like they're on vacation, they might be taking a little, but it's always that sort of give and take of making sure you're balancing those scales. So. Yeah. And I've had so many people ask me too, you're talking a lot about mindset and mood, and you touched on it earlier about the different neurotransmitters that our gut actually makes.
Yeah.
So the microbiome, like how does that play into the neurotransmitters?
And that's one of the coolest aspects of this is that, for about 40 years or so, even before I was studying this area, I've only been studying this area for about half that time, about 20 years, but at least 40 years ago, we knew that there was something in the gut that had signaling effects in the brain. And we also knew that, the signals from the brain could change gut function, so like if you're stressed out, you could get digestive disturbances, right? You could get constipated. You could feel sick to your stomach, like nauseous, but we also knew there were signals produced in the gut that could signal the brain. And it was very, very crude back then. But nowadays, what we know is that probably 90% of your serotonin is made in your gut. That's the neurotransmitter that's sort of associated with being happy or sad. So you don't have enough serotonin, you're more likely to be depressed. 90% of it's being made in the gut. Probably 70% of our dopamine, the neurotransmitter that helps us with motivation, is made in our gut. Most of our norepinephrine that helps us focus, most of the GABA that I mentioned before that helps us relax when we're tense, all of that stuff is being made in the gut. And so, nowadays we look at it and we go, well, wait, all those neurotransmitters are made here in the gut. That's why we call the gut the second brain, because this second brain is actually having a predominant effect on how this first brain, if you will, in the head behaves and performs and, bounces back and, all that kind of stuff. So we really think of humans now as this two-brained creature. And if you want to get the most performance, you need to affect both of those brains simultaneously.
Yeah, and that's so interesting to me because even went back when I had gut issues, I didn't even know that connection. I just knew, wow, when my stomach is off, like my brain has this fog to it. I can't put
Totally.
on it, but I don't know. So how important is, you mentioned sleep. How important is sleep to your microbiome, your gut health?
Yeah, huge, because sleep, so we know that anything that stresses us out is going to be bad systemically, right? It's going to be bad for our brain and our head. It's going to be bad for our muscles. It's going to be bad for our waistline. It's really bad for the gut. And it's bad for the gut in several different ways. It's bad for your gut lining. So it can break your gut lining down, but it's also bad for the bacteria in your gut. It can cause the stress signals that go from the brain to the gut can cause the good bacteria to be less active and the bad bacteria to be more active. So in a sense, stress is causing your microbiome to be out of balance, and that imbalance is causing you to be under more stress. So you get into this very, very vicious cycle. But sleep loss is one of the most unique human physiological stressors. And if we're not getting good sleep, we're automatically stressed. And so, that it's sort of a chicken and egg scenario, right? If you're stressed, sometimes you can't sleep. And if you can't sleep, you're more stressed. And so they feed off of each other. And if you don't either improve your stress levels or improve your sleep quality, or ideally you would do both. You'd be less stressed in the day and you'd be more relaxed at night. That would be the ideal thing. If you don't get a handle on those, they're just going to feed on each other and get you into this very, very vicious cycle.
So when you have someone come to you and they have all of this going on, do you have a protocol that you go to and say, let's start here and, start with the sleep or start with the mindset, or where do you go with that?
Yeah. So if it's somebody who knows they have a sleep problem, people who are sort of sleep deprived, what they'll generally come with, not with a question about improving their sleep. They'll come with a question of, how can I improve my energy levels in the daytime, right? This is a very, very common sort of, like back when I did individual nutrition counseling, that was the number one thing that people came with, daytime fatigue. They'd be like, how can I boost my energy levels in the day? And I would go, well, okay, we need to look at your sleep quality at night before we think about anything about your daytime energy levels. And for a lot of people, the most effective way is to look at their sleep, but look at it from the perspective of what their stress levels look like earlier in the day. And so a lot of times what we'll try to do is improve their neurotransmitters in the day. So let's say serotonin levels, so that they have better stress levels, lower stress levels. They have better resilience. They have a better mood. Like, they've got a better day. That better day sets them up for a better night. And then there's things we can do with them for specifically for nighttime to improve their sleep quality. And then the next morning, they have a better morning and their energy levels are higher and they're not looking for as many stimulants and they're not having as much stress eating. And because they have a better day, they have a better night. And then you can see where this is going. Now, instead of being in a vicious cycle of stress and poor sleep, they're in a virtuous cycle of lower stress and better sleep leads to lower stress and better sleep, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's all kinds of things we can do there. Like, and that's a place where supplements are really, really effective, because we can give somebody, a Kana extract to lower their stress levels in the day. We can give them a corn grass extract at night to improve their melatonin metabolism, right? And then, again, it gets them into that more of a virtuous cycle.
So melatonin is not the answer, right?
Yeah, I'm actually pretty anti-melatonin. Like, taking melatonin at night can really get people into this dependency cycle where, first of all, melatonin doesn't work well for a lot of people, and of the people that it works for, what it does is it only makes you fall asleep a few minutes faster. If you look at the studies, it's about 7 minutes, right? So you fall asleep faster, but it doesn't really improve your sleep quality. And you risk having the melatonin hangover the next morning, where your body hasn't metabolized all of it. And so you're kind of groggy, which defeated the whole purpose of why you took it in the first place, So instead, the corn grass that I mentioned, that's a way that we know can improve your body's natural production of melatonin when you need it. So instead of taking the synthetic hormone that you end up becoming dependent on, you just encourage your body to make melatonin when you need it. And that's a much more efficient way to do it. And you know, in those studies that we've done, we've been able to show that approach, sort of melatonin on demand, improves sleep quality by about 40%, which is life-changing for a lot of people.
That's amazing. And boosting your serotonin actually increases your melatonin production.
Yeah. So serotonin in the daytime is going to help you have a better day, right? You're going to be happier. You're going to be more stress resilient, you know, all that kind of stuff. But then that serotonin is the precursor for melatonin. So if your serotonin metabolism is good in the day, that's good for your day, but it's also good setting you up to have a good night's sleep.
So getting into supplements, you're like a savior for so many people with what you've developed. So we have a kit that actually puts together the gut, the brain, and the pathway in between. And talking about immunity right now,
yeah,
is a huge deal. And you brought something up that even I didn't really fully understand: priming versus boosting. Can you talk about that and how the supplements that we use, that you've helped create and develop?
Yeah. So about, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years ago, we put together a package of products that we call fundamentals, right? So it's, you know, based on this idea of, if we want to improve what's going on here in the brain, we have to look at what's going on here in the second brain, the sort of, you know, gut brain connection, right? So we were focusing on that, but then the axis in between, how your two brains talk to each other, those signals have to travel, right? So if you're making more serotonin here in the gut, it has to be able to have its signaling effect here in the brain. And the way that happens is partly through your inflammatory cascade, partly through your immune system, partly through signaling that we call the endocannabinoid system, right? So there's lots of pathways, but you know, by which these brains talk to each other. But one of the most predominant, one of the most important pathways is your immune system. So your immune system, you can think of as like almost being like a communication highway between the brain in your head and the brain in your gut. And so, you know, our objective 3 years ago when we put this together was, let's enhance that communication route through the immune system so that what happens here in the gut is transmitted as efficiently as possible here in the brain, so that all of our gut changes have you know, the most efficient improvement of mental performance. And the way to do that is to strengthen your immune system. And so we did that. What we find ourselves in now during this whole quarantine period is everyone saying, what can I do to strengthen my immune system? What can I do to you know, boost my immune system? And we've been doing it all along, because in order to get that efficient signaling between the two brains, you have to do something to the immune system called priming the immune system. And priming the immune system not just sends the signals better, so you feel better, but it makes your immune system a better shield, so that, you know, we've shown in trials previously that if you have a properly primed immune system, you have a much, much lower risk for upper respiratory tract infections. And that's what everybody is concerned with now, you know? And so I look at people and I go, look, if you're concerned about, you know, about your immune system to sort of shield you and protect you, why don't we do it in this way so that you just feel better as a result of your day-to-day living, and you get a side benefit of your immune system being stronger, right? Then you get both. You're feeling better and you're less sick. And those are separate things that we can measure, but you can get them both as a package deal if you do it the right way.
Yeah, I've always talked about proactively being healthy versus treating when you're sick. So
right.
That's a mindset thing too, is people just kind of wait till they're not feeling well to do something about it. So.
That is such a great point, that no one thinks about their immune system until they're sick, right? Or until it's all over the news, right? And then people are like, oh, I need to do something about my immune system. And what I want people to realize is, no, you should be doing something about your immune system all the time to keep you from getting sick, but as this nice day-to-day, you know, thing that you can feel, you're going to feel better. And when I say feel better, in our trials, we measured this really cool parameter from psychology research called vigor, which is 1 part physical energy, 1 part mental acuity, and 1 part overall well-being. It's the opposite state of burnout. And we showed that if you do that with your immune system, you feel 20% better in terms of your vigor levels. I mean, that's how people want to feel anyway. So why wouldn't you just do that?
Yeah. And it's just maintaining. If you're at a certain point in your health, you maintain it every day. You don't just stop going for walks or run or whatever it is that you do. So
Right.
oh my God, this was so awesome. I just want people to know that if you're interested in Dr. Shawn's fundamentals that he developed and created, just touch base with me, because it has been life-changing for me. I thought I felt good. You know, you talk about vigor. I was like, I'm good, but I'm like, I'm not afraid. I'm almost gonna be, I'm gonna be 40 in a couple months, and I feel better than I have in a long time. So
yeah, that's it. That's the coolest part about improving vigor in somebody, is that you'll get a lot of people who like at the beginning of an intervention, they would say, well, I don't have any problems. I'm good. I'm fine. Yeah, I have some stress, and maybe I don't get enough sleep, and maybe my diet isn't perfect, but I'm good. And then you improve their vigor by 20% or so, and they go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I could feel this good, and it's neat because we can measure it, we can show it, and they can feel it. They go, they know that they feel better, but it's a really unique kind of like motivational kind of energy. It's the kind of energy where they feel like getting up and doing something with it. And that's great. That means that they're going to do a hobby. They're going to start a business. They're going to walk the dog more, whatever, but it's like this very proactive kind of energy. So it's really cool to see that come into people's lives.
Yeah. And it's just so amazing. That's, some people say, I don't have it. Like you said, I don't have issues. And we haven't even talked. I mean, I'd love to have you back on again, but we haven't even talked about the third brain, which is
right.
Just gets everything flowing. So that's for another episode.
Definitely.
I guess I steal this little question from Shannon, and she's on right now, but what is one thing, and we'll end it here, and I so value your time, and if you got value from this, let me know, because I'd love to have you on again. And if you have questions for Dr. Shawn, but what is one thing for sure, but with just anything with the guts, that you want to share that maybe doesn't get enough love?
Well, one thing that is really funny about sort of where I am in my research path right now is that I can remember the time when I was in graduate school where we had ripped out from like one of these health magazines. We ripped out some ad that was talking about like, some herb that helped with your colon function or something like that. And the headline said, all death begins in the colon, right? And we had put it up above the copier as a joke, right? Because here we were, these science students, we're all getting our PhDs, and we knew better, and ha ha ha, look at this nonsense that was being promoted in these health magazines, right? So this is 30-ish years ago, right? Before we knew any of the stuff that we just talked about. And now I laugh because I look back at that and I go, like, how arrogant were we that we knew all the answers because the science hadn't gotten to a point where we could show that. So what those people were saying is they were observing something, right? When I'm stressed, my gut does something. When my gut does something, it gives me brain fog, right? That was being observed. But scientists couldn't measure it in the way that we can measure it now. And now we can measure it. And not only can we measure it, we can modulate it. And we can do it all through natural means. So it's a really, really cool time. When I ever interact with any of the people from back then, I'm like, do you remember? And now, and it's like, we're like, oh my gosh, the science has changed so much. So we want everyone to realize that, like, what those hippies said 30, 40 years ago, that, all health begins in the gut. That is absolutely true. And if we focus on that, we can not just help people feel better, we can help people perform better, we can improve health, we can probably improve lifespan and health span going into the future. So, that'll be topic for another podcast sometimes, maybe.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so great. What Hippocrates started thousands of years ago talking about.
Exactly.
It's been there. It's right in front of our face. And especially in times like now, where, like you said, people want to know how to get healthy, and this is where it starts, right in the gut. It's not a brain problem, it's a gut problem.
Yep, exactly.
So let's start there. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Shawn. I'm so honored that you were here with me today. And
My pleasure, anytime.
thank you for all that you do in the study of all of this. You gut health, mental wellness, all of the things. So thank you for all that you do.
All right. I'll look forward to being on next time.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Bye. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.